So
Put it on record just in case I forget.
I'm glad, James, you didn't record that.
No, we wouldn't put that in. We'd delete it. Yeah.
Oh, good.
James would delete it.
Well, I mean, I'm getting to know you all now so well, so I won't start saying, oh, good morning, Tom, good morning, Martha, because I'd have to go through the whole lot of you. And then by the time I'm finished, the session would be finished. So, you know, I'm happy to see you all. And literally my sickness was so all encompassing that I couldn't even read, or I was just empty of everything, and just surrendering. So that's why I sent that quote out to you. It was so beautiful that a friend accidentally sent it to me. Well, it was God sent it, because she said it was meant to go to another friend of hers, and it ended up in my email, and it was all about what happens when you abandon your weakness and your nothingness into the divine will. So I thought it was just perfect to send it out to you, because I was feeling that in spades, you know, my weakness, my nothingness, a lot of pain and everything. And it was just glorious, because I hadn't suffered for a long time, and I hear all your stories, and there's many different types of suffering, as you know. There's emotional suffering, there's mental suffering, there's physical suffering. And I was just so happy. I was thinking, oh, finally, I've got a little bit of suffering, you know, to share. Or Jesus is sharing it with us. And if we fuse it back into his divine suffering and pains, it's the greatest thing, he says, suffering and pain. In volume 6, he said something extraordinary, because I'm reading volume 6 at the moment. He said, I am pain. I got such a shock when I read that. I said, pain was conceived in me at my conception. Pain was conceived in me at my conception. And of course, it's a pain he suffers in a divine way. And then he said the souls that he chooses to suffer with him in that pain are the most privileged souls, because they're relieving him a little, you know, just a little of his immense pain. So isn't it interesting? I was reading volume 6 around this time. I got all this suffering. And then he spoke to me those words, I am pain. And so I realized it was a precious gift of Jesus to suffer in him. And that by giving it back to him in abandonment, that he was using it as the means to help alleviate all other suffering souls in the world, and especially children now are target practice for the enemy. And therefore it's a great privilege to be given a little bit of suffering. I just wanted to underline that for you. Just don't forget to fuse it back into his own pain. And if you have access to volume 6, the lessons are very short in volume 6, but they're very, very powerful. So, so we're happy all the time, aren't we?
Yes.
Yes.
We are?
Yes.
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 Oh, thank you, James. We're happy even when we feel unhappy. Now that sounds like, what do they call that, James? An oxymoron?
Yes, or a paradox. Yeah. Like.
Even when we're feeling miserable, in our what you might call the humours of our body, even when we're feeling miserable, our soul is happy because we know that that is a gift Jesus is giving to us, don't we, Mary? Mary Duckett?
Yes.
Don't we know it? Yes. Mary sent me a beautiful email.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Mary.
Yes.
Well,
thank you.
Everything is a gift in the divine will. You don't have to work it out. You don't have to say, why is this happening to me? Did I do this or did blah, blah, blah? We don't try and analyze and discern in the divine will. We embrace, we accept. And we know that at the appropriate moment, Jesus releases us from whatever suffering that we have because he's the one that gave it to us. Right? Now, I'm saying this only to say this happens only to souls who are living fully in the divine will. If you're in the early 3 stages, if you're in the other 3 stages, some of your sufferings, etc., and are consequences of certain weaknesses that you might have, or you're still operating to a degree in the sanctity of the virtues. So when you're still operating the sanctity of the virtues, you're still subject to these human interactive things that affect you. It's only when you're fully abandoned to Jesus, that's when you're living in the 4th degree, when you're a little newborn. Because little newborns, do they discern things? Do they think? Do they analyze? No, they just are abandoned into the arms of their mother and father. You know, up on YouTube, and there was this beautiful little, very short video of a father holding his little baby in his arms, his newborn. It was newborn. And he started talking to his little newborn. It was incredible. And the baby, this is a little newborn, was smiling and mimicking his dad's sounds. And the father got shocked. And he looked over at his wife and said, he's talking back to me. He's talking. And he was mimicking the tones in his dad's voice. And I wanted immediately, of course, to send it out to you all, because even little newborns are communicating, not with the complexities of language or anything, but they communicate with their mum and dad in, as we know, if you've ever had a child, extraordinary little beautiful ways. And so when we keep ourselves little newborns, that's one of the things we should always be asking Jesus, which Louisa did. Keep me very little, Jesus, little in your arms. Because if we try to get to beyond that, there's always dangers, Jesus said, when we start to grow up. And as you know, you've heard of the terrible twos, when the 2-year-old children start to exercise their independent wills. And what's one of the first words they say?
No.
No, no, mummy, no. Now you share your toys with your sister, Mark. Let's say it's my eldest son, Mark. No, they're mine. So even in the divine will, surprisingly, Jesus keeps saying to us, keep very little, like a little newborn, abandoned in my arms.
Beautiful.
And the more abandoned you are, the better. The better it is for you. And then whenever he sees fit, as he did with me, he let me go on for weeks and weeks, and he was purifying me and teaching me a lesson, and he was loving me by sharing a little bit of his sufferings with me. And he was giving me an opportunity, you know, to return that love in the form of pain. And so sometimes I feel like I can put it all in one sentence and say, there you are, you have it. There's no questions in the divine will. There is no problems in the divine will. We're not looking for answers. We're just abandoning ourselves to the love of the Trinity in every moment of our day. And we're doing our fusion. And that's it. Wrap up, go home and just do it. And then, you know, it really is that simple, but it's amazing how we can complicate it. So I know from each of you, from the first time I came on, which I have no idea when that was. It must have been about, I don't know, Jenny would know.
Just after the retreat she did.
Just after the retreat, wasn't it? 2021? Or probably just after our retreat. Probably.
On Zoom.
Yes. Yes. Probably.
Was it?
Yeah, after 21 or beginning of 22. We'll have a look later.
Because I know you were studying the beauty of nothing when I snuck on to the Zoom. No, I snuck onto the Zoom when you were doing the difference between the two sanctities.
That's right.
And I was curious. I was just curious to see what you were discussing, you know, because the difference between the two sanctities is critical. And it's interestingly, Father Emile Millat was asked by the coordinator what subjects he wanted me to talk about, because he invited me to share the retreat with him. And I let him do it, you know, because if you abandon your own will and your own choices, it means these are the subjects Jesus wants me to talk about. So he said, talk about Louisa, the great office of Louisa for the first talk. And then the second talk, the difference between human sanctity and divine sanctity. And I was thrilled because that's the stumbling block for most of us. Most of us need to make that transition from the way we operated in the sanctity of the virtues and into the sanctity of the divine holiness of God himself. Now, see, when you rephrase something like sanctity of the divine will, we hear that word divine will so often, we sometimes are not grasping what it means. It's the very own sanctity of God himself. So but it's obvious that the sanctity of God himself is supremely different to the sanctity that we've known in the history of human beings. It's obvious that it would be different. And this is what Jesus tells Louisa. It is so different that he couldn't even find the words to express it to her, the great difference between these two sanctities. So when we finish this beautiful book, we're going to continue. It's something I really like to keep referring to, how to shift ourselves from the thinking, the way we used to think in the sanctuaries. Hello.
Or shall we start then, darling Geraldine, and continue with the eternal communion?
Yes.
I will, darling.
Thank you very much. And I'll just do the fusion prayer, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
And I don't have it in front of me, but I know what I want to say. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Jesus, my love, my life, my being, my all, my destiny, I fuse myself into you, and in you I discover the Father's will reigning beautifully, gloriously in every one of your acts, your thoughts, your works. And I want to embrace each and every one in the love of the Holy Spirit, so that my intellect will become yours and able to embrace the wisdom of God. My memory will become like that of the Holy Spirit and be able to remember only those truths that you want me to remember. And my will become submerged in the will of our Father, so that I will operate with nothing but his will, which is the origin of all good. And I pray this, substituting for each and every creature, from Adam and Eve to the last who shall live, because so many of your children do not know the power, wisdom, and love in this divine holiness. And therefore, like Louisa, I operate on their behalf and ask you, my beloved Jesus, to incarnate yourself in me, so that I may embrace the Father with the same love with which you embrace him in every single divine truth that we are about to read from the book of heaven. Amen. Fiat.
Fiat.
Okie doke.
From the bottom of page 39. From volume 9, May 25th, 1909. Jesus confounds the soul with love. Continuing in my usual state, Blessed Jesus was not coming. However, for the whole day, I felt as if there was someone over me who would not let me waste 1 minute of time, but would keep me always in continuous prayer. A thought wanted to distract me by saying to me, when the Lord does not come, you pray more, you are more attentive, and by this you yourself give him the field not to come, because the Lord may say, since she behaves better when I do not go, it is better if I deprive her of me. Since I could not waste time in listening to what my thought was saying, in order to shut the door on its face, I said, the more he does not come, the more I will confound him with love. I don't want to give him the occasion. This is what I can do, and this is what I want to do. And he is free to do whatever he wants. And without thinking of the nonsense that my thought had told me, I continued to do what I was supposed to do. In the evening, however, I didn't even remember about this. Blessed Jesus came, and almost smiling at me, he told me, brava, brava, my lover, who wants to confound me with love. However, I tell you, you will never confound me. And if sometimes it seems that I am confounded with love, it is I who give you the freedom to do it, because the only relief and the thing which I most enjoy from creatures is love. In fact, it was I who solicited you to pray, who prayed with you, who gave you no respite. So instead of me being confounded, I confounded you with love. And since you felt all filled with love and were confounded by it, in seeing that my love was pouring so much into you, you thought you were confounding me with your love. However, I tell you, as long as you try to love me more, I delight in these mistakes of yours, and I make of them a joke between me and you. Fiat mihi secundum verbum tuum.
Well, it's really a beautiful lesson there, because Jesus is saying basically, Louise is doing nothing. He's putting his love, his desires, his prayers into her, and she thinks she becomes so hungry for him, for his love. But it's Jesus who places that hunger inside of her. And this happens to us too. I'm sure each one of us occasionally thinks that we are doing something. It's actually Jesus does everything in us. Everything. Even when we are composing our rounds and responding the way we hope he would like us to respond. Everything comes from its origin, its source, doesn't it? Everything. So we actually, it sounds strange, but we actually do nothing except one thing. That one thing that's necessary. We give him our human will. And we give him our human will in abandonment to his will and all the acts of his divine humanity. So this is the one thing necessary before we do anything. And then he operates in us. Now, you can see what he says there. He said, it was I who gave Louisa, gave her that sense of hunger and thirst. And see, he says, if sometimes it seems to you, it seems that I am confounded with love, it is I who give you the freedom to do it. So sometimes we think we are operating, or even when we're hungering for Jesus, even when we feel empty of Jesus, he's giving us that sense of emptiness. He's giving us this thirst. Now, do you remember the motto of the Missionaries of Charity, Mother Teresa's order, is 2 words: I thirst. They have that in every chapel. They have it everywhere they live and work. I thirst, because heavenly, the beautiful saint Teresa of Calcutta experienced Jesus in every suffering soul, crying out from the cross, I thirst. And she wanted to quench his thirst. But do you know, you would think that this woman, this great saint that quenched the thirst of Jesus in extraordinary ways all over the world, that he would quench her thirst for him? No. He gave her the terrible dryness, the desert-like experience of nothingness in her soul. And she lived with this cross all her life, because she knew, as the saints know, that he was sharing his thirst with her. So she became a living icon of the thirsting God. A living icon of the thirsting God on the cross when he cried out, I thirst, meaning he thirsts for you, for your soul. And so when she went to heaven, she would have been given the recompense of a lifetime of thirsting and hungering for souls. Do you remember when she spoke at the United Nations, and there is Hillary Clinton and President Clinton in front of her? And she wasn't a great orator, by the way, but when she spoke, everyone listened. And she spoke against abortion, and there they are, sitting in the front row. She had the courage to speak the truth in front of the leaders of the world that were not speaking out for the unborn child. And then she said, give me all your children. If you don't want them, give them to me. And who was speaking through her? Jesus. Give me your children. Don't kill them. Give them to me. I'll find love and a home for them. So you have to be like Mother Teresa, like Louisa, You have to hunger and thirst for Jesus on behalf of all humanity, because they're hungering and thirsting, but they don't know what they're hungering and thirsting for, because they don't have the faith. They're hungering. And what did Jesus say? Blessed are you who hunger and thirst after righteousness. What's the rest of that, James? That quote. Blessed are you who hunger and thirst after righteousness.
For you'll be
For
satisfied.
your
For you'll be
what?
satisfied.
Oh, thank you, James. For you will be satisfied. Okay? Thank you. And the end of that, that's the Beatitudes. You know, after this teaching, go and read the Beatitudes again, the beautiful Beatitudes. And you'll receive such a joy. And it ends up by saying, and blessed are you when they persecute you, when they treat you badly and abuse you on account of your loyalty to me. Blessed are you, because the kingdom of heaven will be yours. That's Jesus' promise to you. So this is about love. This is why I gave the last retreat on love, because Jesus says he wants us to confound him with love. But of course, we can't confound him with our little love. He has to pour his divine love into us in order to confound himself. And so he says that here. He said it was he who was giving her the sense of being confounded with love, and so that she could give him back in a divine measure the love that he longed for. And then he says, I delight in these mistakes of yours. You know, how beautiful that is. So continue, James.
On page 41, from volume 9, July the 8th, 1910. Louisa's body is a tabernacle for Jesus. Her soul, the pyx which contains him. Her heartbeat, the host that encloses him. Being very afflicted because of the privation of my highest good, and having received communion, in receiving the Holy Host, it stopped in my throat. And as I suckled it in order to push it down, I suckled a sweet and delicious humour. Then, after suckling very much, it went down, and I could see the host changed into a baby who said, your body is my tabernacle. Your soul is the pyx that contains me. The beating of your heart is like the host that serves me in order to transform myself into you, as if within a host. With this difference, that in the host, as it is consumed, I am subject to continuous deaths, while the beating of your heart, symbolizing your love, is not subject to being consumed. And so my life is continuous. Therefore, why so much affliction about my privations? If you don't see me, you feel me. If you don't feel me, you touch me. And now with the fragrance of my perfumes which diffuse around you, Now, with the light with which you feel invested. Now, by making a liqueur that cannot be found on earth descend into you. Now, by just touching you, and the many other ways which are invisible to you. Now, in order to obey, I will write these things that Jesus says happened to me often, and also while being fully awake. These fragrances, I myself am unable to tell what kind they are. I call the fragrance of love, and I feel it at communion. If I pray, if I work, especially if I have not seen him, and I say to myself, today he's not come. Don't you know, O Jesus, that without you I cannot be, nor do I want to be? And immediately, and almost suddenly, I feel as though invested by that fragrance. Other times, as I move, or if I move the bed sheets, I feel that fragrance coming out, and in my interior, I hear him say, I am here. Other times, while I am all afflicted, as I go about raising my eyes, a ray of light comes before my sight. However, these things I take into no account, nor do they satisfy me. That which alone makes me happy is Jesus. All the rest I receive with certain indifference. I wrote this only to obey.
Thank you, James. I really believe each one of these lessons is so truly extraordinary, you know, that you need to kind of masticate them, because what Jesus is making of each one of you, as he's told us before in the readings we've already done, he wants you to be his living tabernacle. He wants your soul to be his pyx. He wants the beating of your heart to be repeating continuously, I love you, I love you, I love you. And when he says that the host in Holy Communion, when people receive him in Holy Communion, but they're not living in the divine will, it doesn't mean they're bad people, by the way. I'm not making that comparison at all. They can be good people living their normal lives, but they're still living in their human will without total surrender to the divine will in the way Jesus shows us in the book of heaven. And therefore they can't satisfy Jesus' longing for love. He was satisfying us for 2,000 years by giving us himself in Holy Communion. But on his part, the souls, even the great saints for 2,000 years, because they did not have within them this generative gift of the divine will, could not give full satisfaction back to God. He loved these souls because they were living the virtues, they were loving him, they were compassionating him. And many of them, as you well know, were very heroic. They became martyrs for the faith. For example, at the end of June, we celebrated the martyrdom of the early Christian church. the martyrs who died in the Colosseum, who were devoured by lions. And when that feast day came up, I was doing rounds, redoing all their lives of faithfulness to Jesus, taking all their precious blood that they shed in offering their lives for Jesus, and divinizing their martyrdom. So every feast day that comes up, this is what you do. You're not praying to the saints. You are divinizing their lives from conception to their holy deaths. And you're giving them the double joy of this divinization. And they're so grateful to you when you do that, that they immediately begin operating on your behalf. You don't even have to say to them, please, Saint Anthony, Saint Bernadette are two of my patron saints. Oh, please do this for me, please do that. You don't, because I fuse their entire life into the divine will. My beloved Saint Bernadette, as a child, I was a chronic asthmatic and she was a chronic asthmatic. So I took her for my confirmation saint. But now I have been given the gift to operate in of the divine will. I can double her glory in heaven. So I take her life from her conception. She suffered from her early age right through to her life. She was always suffering. And I was thinking of her the last week or so, because one of the nuns who used to walk by used to taunt her when she'd be in the infirmary, it was called, and she'd always be in bed in the infirmary, and she said, Bernadette, you're always sick, and almost accusing her of malingering, trying to get special attention. And she said, it's my vocation to be sick. I loved her saying that, my vocation to be sick. And so when I was sick, I was remembering those words of Saint Bernadette and how she would have offered all her sufferings. So in this lesson here, why so much affliction about my privations, Jesus said to Louisa, because if you don't see me, you feel me. If you don't feel me, you touch me. But Louisa says she's not happy with all of those little gifts that he gives her, the fragrances, the liqueurs, etc. She just wants Jesus alone, because she's become so used to relating and seeing his humanity in front of her. And all of these little gifts he gives her, she's not happy or content with them. And if we ever saw Jesus alone, we'd be the same. We would want just him. We wouldn't want all these little gifts. I don't know if you remember, Jenny, but back 3 decades ago, well, it happened up here and I think all around Australia, our rosary chains would turn gold.
Yes.
And my friends, we would go to Mass and adoration and we would smell the fragrances, these fragrances. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. It's beautiful. Once in a while, Jesus gives me a little taste just to keep me going when I'm absolutely, on empty.
Yeah, empty. Well, that era, it was so profound because almost everyone was experiencing it.
Yes.
And Our Lady was trying to get us, our attention to keep praying our rosaries, to keep doing our masses and our communions, etc. But now with the great gift we've been given, after all of that, all the other gifts, he's asking us to be content with being deprived of all these little, gifts that seduce us.
Yes.
And I'm saying this to each one of you because I'm training you to understand what it's like to live in the fourth degree. To live in the fourth degree, you have to be welcoming deprivation, humiliation. You're not looking for all these things like rosaries turning into gold, etc. How wonderful the Blessed Trinity and Our Lady were that they allowed us to experience that. But they knew we were like little children in our faith back then, and we needed to be attracted more and more to our fidelity. And now by giving us this great gift, it's an honor because they're saying to us, we think now you're ready to live in the fourth degree. We think you're ready to suffer. We believe you're ready to be deprived of all our consolations, like Jesus, Mary, Joseph, and Louisa were. The deprivations that the soul who lives in the divine will lives in are crucifying, because the greater the love within the soul, the greater suffering these deprivations bring to her. So even let us read that second paragraph, please, James. Now, in order to obey, I write these things, because we'll hear what Louisa says about fragrances, etc.
Now, in order to obey, I will write these things that Jesus says happened to me often, and also while being fully awake. These fragrances, and I myself am unable to tell what kind they are, I call the fragrance of love, and I feel it at communion. If I pray, if I work, especially if I have not seen him, and I say to myself, today he has not come. Don't you know, O Jesus, that without you I cannot be, nor do I want to be? And immediately and almost suddenly, I feel as though invested by that fragrance. Other times, as I move, or if I move the bedsheets, I feel that fragrance coming out, and in my interior, I hear him say, I am here. Other times, while I am all afflicted, as I go about raising my eyes, a ray of light comes before my sight. However, these things I take into no account, nor do they satisfy me. That which alone makes me happy is Jesus. All the rest I receive with certain indifference. I wrote this only to obey.
Now, this is the attitude we must have also. Even though Jesus is giving Louisa these beautiful little gifts, he knows she has reached the point that nothing else but he satisfies her. But he's bringing her even more deeply into the final stage. Notice this is volume 9, right?
Mm.
This is volume 9. So you can see how Jesus is drawing Louisa into the next stage, where she will be the first soul on earth stigmatized in the divine will. The first creature, that's after Our Lady, of course, who received all the gifts. First soul stigmatized in the divine will to begin the era, to begin this era of the divine will on earth. Now that's in volume 12, where Jesus explains to Louisa, and she's 54 years of age when he tells her this in volume 12. So she's around 30 years of age and 33 when she takes possession of Jesus' heart. You'll see this in the introduction to most of my books. It'll have the 4 nuptials of Louisa. But you see how long it's taken Jesus to bring Louisa to the fullness of living in this 4th degree. He didn't do it immediately. He took her through stages. So don't feel discouraged, if you feel you're not there yet, because Jesus, with your fidelity to Jesus, with your I love yous, with your doing your rounds, the more you show him, you want him more than anything else. That's what you've got to show him. I want you, Jesus, nothing but you. I'll give you, if you just give me a second, I want to get volume 6. Oh, I can't walk properly. It's a short lesson, but it is absolutely amazing. This is the manner you must acquire. Continuing my usual state, after much struggling, I saw my adorable Jesus for just a little, and he told me, "You who wanted me so much, what do you want? What is it that you care about the most?" And I said, "Lord, I want nothing. What I care about the most is you alone." And he repeated, "What? You want nothing? Ask me for something. Ask me for sanctity, my grace, virtues, for I can give you everything." And again I said, "Nothing, nothing. I want you alone and whatever you want." And again Jesus added, "So you want nothing else? I alone am enough for you? Your desires have no other life in you but for me alone. All your trust then must be in me alone. For even if you want nothing, you will obtain everything." And without giving me any more time, he disappeared like a flash. Now, this is the key to living in the divine will, is wanting nothing but Jesus. No other desires but Jesus. When you reach that stage, it's April the 11th, 1904. I didn't do the full lesson, but when you want nothing but Jesus, and he repeats this, throughout the book of heaven. When that's the only thing you want in the world. And Louisa even says, no, I don't want your virtues or your this or that. I just want you. Now, if you're in love with someone, right, and another human being, I'm talking about him. Obviously, every human being has imperfections. But if you're in love, what happens? You don't notice their imperfections. And if they're away from you, you desire to have them back with you. And you have that same attitude of Louisa. I want nothing but you. Come home. You're not thinking about their qualities or anything that might attract you about them. You want that person, whole and entire, to be in your company. That's how Louisa feels with Jesus. And when he gives her all the added things, all the wonderful, his attributes and creation and the perfumes and the liqueurs, and even when she moves the sheets on her bed, she's smelling the perfumes of his fragrances. She says it means nothing to her when he is not there. Mm-hmm. So this is the attitude we must have. If we don't have this attitude, we won't become his tabernacle. Our soul won't become his pyx. And the beating of our heart won't become the host that serves him to transform himself into us. Because he wants to find us empty of desires, empty of all these things we think we need or we think others need. And when we reach this state, which I think John of the Cross described as the nada pura way, the way of pure nothingness, then we're ready to receive the gift of his divinity. Because there's nothing else in the way that's going to interrupt our union with him. Thank you, whoever you are. Goodbye. And so, is there any responses to what we've been reading this morning?
Geraldine.
Carol Vaughan. Is that Carol Vaughan there saying goodbye?
Hi, it's
Yes.
Beth.
Yes, goodbye. Goodbye. Love you.
Oh, I love you, Carol. Bye now.
Take care, okay?
Yeah.
Can I share one brief little thought, Miss Geraldine?
Yes, Beth.
On June the 27th, as I was in Mass, and I was loving Jesus with his own love during the consecration of the Eucharist, as I was about to process up to receive Jesus, I was praying in my interior, and it goes so beautifully with this reading that we just read from volume 9, especially the part that says, your body is my tabernacle, your soul is the pyx. And then further along it says, this is the host as it is consumed. Well, the word consumed rang true to me and called me back to my notes in my prayer journal. And I spoke these words to the Lord as I was approaching him to consume him. And I said in my interior, You consume me, O Lord. May I be your total consummation. And those are not words that I normally say. And it struck me as absolutely so pertinent to this reading today, because I felt at that moment that I was the pyx and I was going to receive him so deeply. And the last 3 weeks, I've been helping my dad to prepare for death. He died on Friday. And and knowing what I know in the divine will for the last 4 years, it was the most beautiful experience that our family has ever been through.
Beautiful.
He was so prepared. He was not a man of God, but he sensed something in that home, which was so much peace. And he turned to the Lord and received all the sacraments upon his death. He was 91. And he was very lucid. He was still with it. And it was because I share this with you, because not because I'm anybody, I'm nobody, but because if you're in that season of life where you're helping others to prepare to meet the Lord, the divine will absolutely elevate you to a level of prayer that will make it such a beautiful anointed experience. And I just wanted to share that, because this is the first time I've actually gotten on anything in 3 weeks, because we have been preparing the family and preparing for his funeral, which is Wednesday. So God bless you. Thank you for letting me share that.
Thank you, Beth, for sharing our deepest consolation. That's just wonderful joy in hearing what you said, because that's going to give so many of us who are in that season, we're helping our parents. So thank you, and other loved ones. Thank you so much, darling.
Beautiful, Beth. And it's very obvious that prayer of consummation is so important. Jesus wants to consume our humanity, to divinize us. And the more you pray that prayer, I was trying to find the prayer Louisa prays in the hours of the Passion, which is extraordinarily beautiful. And about that, about being consumed, and it's in the hours. I just can't find it right here and now, but there are a couple of beautiful prayers. One beautiful one is volume 12, October the 13th, 1923. I think it's in volume 12, and it's a beautiful reflection of after communion. I should find that for you for next week. Did anyone get anything, special?
I got something special because at the retreat this weekend, went to a beautiful confession, and then they had a healing service where Mother Gabriel had the robe of Padre Pio. You got blessed by the cross of the true cross by Father Celso, and Father Blunt had oil from Louisa. And when he applied it to my forehead, I had these shocks go through my system, and I could feel all this energy. And then the next day when I had communion, it tasted like honey. And it was just the most beautiful experience I've ever had in receiving the Eucharist. It just tasted like honey, and it was so beautiful.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you, Lynn. That's
Thank you
beautiful.
for sharing, Lynn. That usually means that something good is coming up when you get something like that. From
Oh,
experience.
but you could feel the energy because he, was waving and breathing on you, and you could feel all this energy coming. It was just the most beautiful thing. And to taste like honey was absolutely an experience that you'll never forget.
Praise be to God. Hang on to that when the
Praise
hard
God.
times come.
Uh-huh.
Jesus.
There, I have found the prayer at the end of the 8 p.m. hour that Louisa prays. This is a beautiful prayer to pray after communion. It's the last 3 paragraphs of the 8 p.m. hour of the Passion. My sweet love, in this hour, you transubstantiated yourself in bread and wine. O Jesus, please grant that everything I say and do may be a continual consecration of yourself in me and in souls. My sweet life, when you enter into me, grant that my every heartbeat, desire, affection, thought, and word may endure your sacramental consecration in such a way that with my entire tiny being consecrated, it may become so many hosts to give you to souls. And by virtue of your consecration, O Jesus, may I consecrate all of you into all souls. O Jesus, my sweet love, may I be your tiny host in order to enclose within myself, as within a living host, your entire being. So there, the prayer is already being composed. Jesus said he is the author of those prayers in the hours of the Passion. So it's a beautiful prayer you could write on a little prayer card and say after you receive communion.
Beautiful.
Now, anyone else would like to comment on?
Excuse me, Geraldine, that it's Teresa. Was that 8 a.m. or 8 p.m.?
8 p.m.
8 p.m.
8
It's
p.m.
just,
Thank you.
it's, oh, sorry, did I say 8 a.m., did I?
No, you didn't.
No, I just didn't hear.
It's just at the end of the institution of the Eucharist. It's the 8 p.m. hour, the institution of the Holy Eucharist in the hours of the Passion. And there are other beautiful prayers in the hours of the Passion that I use as well when I go to Mass and after Mass, because Jesus promises that, I read it to you. Did I read it? I haven't been on Zoom for a while, have I?
No.
So Jesus promises you this. I want to read this to you. That when you pray the prayers of the Passion, thousands upon thousands of angels are around you. And these are the angels that accompanied Jesus during his entire life. So if you learn to use the hours in that devotional way when you're at Mass, and you choose certain readings that you know are important as the different parts of the Mass, this is what happens. While meditating on the hours of the Passion, my beloved Jesus told me, my daughter, in the course of my mortal life, thousands and thousands of angels escorted my humanity, gathering everything I did. Steps, works, words, sighs, pains, drops of my blood, and bringing them to the Father in heaven. These angels were obedient to my every wish, and they protected me and paid me honor. Now, you remember the scene in the movie, The Passion of the Christ, where Jesus is being scourged
Mm.
and his blood, his flesh are all flowing on the ground. We're so immersed in the horror of that. I want you to remember that Jesus said these thousands upon thousands of angels are surrounding him, gathering, because Our Lady commanded them to, gathering the drops of blood, even the threads of his hair that they pulled out when they're punishing him and treating him so horrendously. All of these parts of his humanity were gathered by the thousands and thousands of angels. And as they gathered these parts of his humanity, I'm going to tell you something really important after this. Oh, it's all important, I know, but there's something you can do that you probably haven't thought of yet. Jesus. So Our Lady commanded these angels to assist her in gathering all the precious blood, the threads of hair, the pieces of flesh. And the angels brought all these to the Father in heaven. And now I'll finish reading what Jesus says, then I'll tell you what to do when you do this round. Now these same angels have a special office. As a soul meditates on my life, passion, blood, wounds, and prayers, the angels come to this soul and they gather together her words, her prayers, her acts of compassion, her tears, and her offerings. And then, upon uniting them with mine, they bring the gifts before my majesty, renewing the glory and joy of my life. The delight of the angels is so great that they listen with great reverence to what each soul is saying during the time of this meditation. And they also pray with each of them. So you have thousands upon thousands of angels praying with you when you pray the hours of the Passion. And they're taking every one of these prayers before the eternal majesty of God and uniting them to all the acts of Jesus himself, our Blessed Mother, Louisa, all the divine lives, renewing the glory and joy of Jesus' life. And during this meditation, they also pray with each of them. Thus, with what attention and respect must a soul meditate on these hours, thinking that the angels hang upon her lips, repeating after her everything she prays. Then he added, after the many bitter fruits that the creatures produce, these hours are like sweet little drinks that the faithful souls bring to me. Yet if compared with the much bitterness provoked by the world, the sweetness of these drinks is indeed very little. Therefore, spread these writings. Now, that's volume 11, October the 13th, 1916. Exactly 1 year before Our Lady, the miracle of the sun at Fatima. Exactly 1 year before. Now, Now I'm going to tell you what to do as an extension of this. When you're gathering up together with the thousands upon thousands of angels who are there beside you, the pieces of flesh and blood torn from the humanity of Jesus, they are taken to the throne of God in heaven, right? But they are held there awaiting the reconstitution, the reformation of Jesus' body in the sepulchre. And these same thousands upon thousands of angels, at the command of our Mother and our Heavenly Father, because they only act according to the will of God, recompose the tortured, scourged body. And you know what that body looked like, because thanks to Mel Gibson and Jim Caviezel, which I thank God for those two men, crucifixion and scourging, than we've seen in any other movie. So our Blessed Mother, together with all the angels, thousands upon thousands, recomposes the body of Jesus. And the hands of his eternal Father are working with the love of the Holy Spirit to recompose his body. I'm moving towards something here that you may not have thought of before, but I have spoken about this before. And it's very important. There have been billions of babies dismembered in the wombs of their mothers. Their hearts, their livers, their organs taken out for commercial sale, and their bodies dismembered. So when I was doing this round of the almost dismembered, it wasn't dismembered. Command the thousands upon thousands of angels that gather up every drop of blood he shed to go to each and every infant that is being mercilessly killed in the womb, the bodies of these little infants. And then I baptized them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And I asked these angels to take them back to the arms of their Heavenly Father and Mother, with their bodies completely recomposed, perfectly as Jesus' resurrected body was, recomposed. It's the theology of the church that the resurrected body of Jesus was the same humanity, because there were debates over the years, was it a different humanity, to the one before? We won't get into that because it's not important. I'll leave that to the theologians to discuss. But the church's teaching is the same humanity. Now, that humanity was knit together in his mother's womb by the will of the Father and the love of the Holy Spirit. So the love of the Father, and in the book of heaven, there's a place where it says it was the hands of the Father that formed the humanity of Jesus, together with the blood, the immaculate blood of our mother's heart. So this recomposition of, when I was doing that round, I began to see how we had that same power to recompose all the bodies of these slaughtered babies. Because this is how the devil won't have victory. We have the power to completely oppose what the devil has done through these abortionists and these unfortunate parents that feel they have to abort their children. So, many by force, as you know, in communist China and North Korea, etc. So not only recomposing the bodies of these little infants, but you can go further. What about the bodies of souls that were during war times completely, lacked reverent burial? What about all the souls that their bodies were just treated like trash? What about the bodies of souls that were just left out in the open air for the vultures to devour? You can take the bodies of all souls that have never been given a reverent and just death and burial, and you can recompose their bodies using the command you've been given in the divine will to these thousands upon thousands of angels. And as you recompose these bodies so disrespectfully treated, you can recompose, for example, the body of Saint Joan of Arc, which fell like ashes to the ground. And I don't know if there's a verification of this, but I was told that her heart was left incorrupt. The one part of her body that was left untouched by the fire was her heart. And Jesus is showing us in all these miraculous incidents that he reverences the body. He reverences our bodies. And for a very long time, the church forbade cremation. It was only allowed after the wars because of the necessity, of the mass graves, etc. So the church taught that for a reason, because our bodies after death are destined for resurrection. The body is loved by God so much because he created our bodies. So this is something to contemplate in these days. And another way God shows us his reverence for the body is the incorruptibles, the many, many incorruptibles that there are. So I just want you to ponder the power you have to recompose the humanities of every aborted child and present that aborted child through the hands of these angels. Thousands upon thousands of angels are there at your service. Jesus says it, Volume 11, October 13th, 1916. Thousands upon thousands of angels are there waiting you to do this round. Bye, Mary. Love you, Mary. So, please use the power you have. Operate with the power you have. You're not a king or queen if you don't govern your kingdom the way a holy king and queen should govern. And you want to understand that you have been given the office of king and queen by Jesus, by Our Lady. And these thousands upon thousands of angels are at your service. They're waiting for you to command them. And it's not you who command them, it's the divine will. So the first thing you do is you say, I fuse myself into your divine will. I take all of its power, wisdom, and love. And beloved angels, I command you in the name of Jesus Christ to gather up all the dismembered bodies of the infants who've been aborted, recompose these bodies, take them to the eternal Father in heaven, and as they lay in your hands, I baptize them with the baptism of love of the divine will in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Fiat.
Geraldine, thank you. Thank you so much.
So have I told you that one before?
No.
Oh,
It's beautiful.
okay, because I did mention that at the retreat in Sydney. Why? Because they were bringing a law before Parliament to slaughter babies that survive abortion, to give permission to murder these children. And it was such a horrible thought that the Parliament would vote, even consider to vote on this, that I gave my last talk on the 9 excesses of love of Jesus in the womb. But this came out of it, you know, this awareness of our power to recompose the bodies of dismembered people. Now, also, you have people that you might witness in your family who die very painful deaths, you know. And just think of all the people who used to die from leprosy and lose their noses, mouths, ears, arms, faces. You can recompose all their bodies as well in the resurrected humanity of Jesus. And these are things you've got to try and focus on, that this is your office, this is what you do. And the saints in heaven can't do what you can do. Only the wayfaring children of God on earth who live in the divine will have this power. And therefore you must use the power you have. You must first of all recognize you have the power of God in your hands at every moment of the day. After you fuse yourself, and then operate in it. Think of all the amazing things you can do in your nothingness. I think I should finish there, Jenny, don't you?
I think that's beautiful session, Geraldine. If you can close, someone would close with a